I have to go.
Okay, welcome everybody to this meeting of the ILD. Everybody's well today. I'm going to start the meeting just with apologies. I believe we've got apologies from the Chairman Club. Are there any other apologies? And do we have any declarations of interest? Okay. Before we start the meeting proper, I think we should acknowledge the work of colleagues across the partnership, particularly with the RCN Nurse of the Year Award, and Laura McCann won the Learning Disability Nurse of the Year, and she's the senior charge nurse in the Learning Disability team. And Irene Martin in Unit 5 at Falkirk Community Hospital were runners-up in Team of the Year, and Janet Wilson, Nursing Assistant at Longview Hospital, was Nursing Support Worker of the Year. So I think we should say a huge congratulations, and I think it's a real recognition of the fantastic work that's been going on, not just in the Falkirk Partnership, but across Forth Valley. So I hope that we can extend our best wishes to everybody who took part, because I know that a number of the teams across Forth Valley did as well, and to our winners and runners-up. And with that lovely part, we'll move on to the business and the work of the agenda. And our first item is the minute of the meeting of the IGIP held on the 31st of March. I don't propose to go through it page by page, but if anyone has any corrections to the minutes? No. In that case, are we happy to agree the minute? Agreed. Yes. And moving swiftly on to the action log, and I'll pass to Patricia. Does any notes around the action log?
Right, thank you, Chair. The action on the intermediate care facility and came to bed review continues, and we've been in recent discussion with the Vice Chair about commissioning an additional piece of work to update our data. Now that we're so far out from COVID, we should be able to sort of recalibrate some of the data. So myself and the team will take that on and we'll update you at future meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions around the action log? No. In that case, I shall move on to the Chief Officer report and pass back to Patricia.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the board will see this as a regular Chief Officer update report, and you'll see there's, as usual, updates on various aspects of the service, including particular focus on the Alcohol Drug Partnership, the progress of the MAP standards, and the annual report survey, which is detailed within the report. Just like to draw your attention to section 4, the delegated authority. And as you'll be aware, the board has been delegated authority to myself in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair to make decisions, any urgent decisions that are required out with the cycle of the board meetings. We'd like to continue that while we're doing a review of the governance and delegation of authority and bring back a further report. I'd like to acknowledge the support from Gail Woodcock, who stepped in recently to be acting Chief Officer as a result of my absence, and Gail and the team, everyone of the team really stepped up to that, and I'd like to acknowledge that. Thank you, Gail. In terms of the service update, you'll see there's information about the registration of Thornton Gardens, our community equipment service, as well as the ongoing recruitment campaign. I'd like to draw your attention to the National Procurement Framework and the work that is going on in relation to that. In addition to that, also we work on changing places toilets. which is ongoing, and you'll see at 5.27 that we now have 8 changing places toilets within the Falkirk area, and that's us moved from a position about 5 years ago where Falkirk had none. And we've worked really closely with members of the community, and in particular the group of parents and carers who have been working with us to improve that provision, and that's ongoing work, and we'll keep you updated on that. But that's a particular improvement that we've been able to support and facilitate as a result of Falkirk Council's decision to provide us with the capital funds to do that. So there's quite innovative work going on, and some new developments that we'll report at a future meeting. There's an update on the Forth Valley escalation process, NHS Forth Valley, and the Forth Valley Hospital improvement plan. So I hope that you find the report helpful, and I commend you the recommendations, and that's to agree to delegate the authority to a chief officer pending the review of the scheme of delegation, to approve the ADP annual report survey for submission, and sorry, I should have touched on sadly but great for him, we've had notification that Stephen intends to retire with effect from the end of this calendar year. Stephen joined us about 18 months ago and has really fitted in well with the team and helped deliver. I hope you recognise some really clear financial reports and support for their financial planning. And it's just to notify the board that we have got the recruitment process underway for Stephen's replacement. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Patricia, and I obviously like to, as chair, formally welcome you back, and also to extend our thanks to Gail in our role as acting chief officer, and I agree completely. You know, the whole team led by Gail really certainly supported the chair and vice chair and the work of the partnership well straight away. So thank you very much. And also I think obviously we've got a wee while until Stephen retires, but I'd like to take the opportunity just now, and I'm sure there'll be another one, just to thank Stephen for all his work. I know that personally I've found Stephen excellent to work with, and he's got a lot of humour and patience, and he supported myself and previously as a vice chair with the financial reports. So thank you so much. So I'd like to open it up for questions or comments. You just want to raise your electronic hand if you'd like to ask any questions. Well, I've got one. Just in terms of the progress report around the community equipment service provision and the GLS delivery, about progress report, and I just wondered if we had an estimated date.
I certainly can provide an update at the next meeting.
That's great, thank you very much. And just to say, I'm so delighted that we're now in a position where we've 8 changing places toilets, and I look forward to the work in extending that provision. And I think that, you know, making, I know for the families and individuals involved in progressing that work, it's so important to make our communities accessible to everybody, and I think that's an important part of doing that. So I just want to know that piece of work, because it's really been a great one. So I'll just move on to the recommendations. Are we happy to agree to continue to delegate authority? Yes, thank you. Are we happy to approve the ADP annual report survey for submission? And obviously our additional one is to note the retirement of the chief finance officer, so we'll note that. So without further ado, I shall actually move on to Secretary Finance Officer for the 2023-24 finance update.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for those kind words. I think it is covered by the time of the government's report later on. Thank you, Kevin. So no pressure then as I go through the finance reports. This is the first of two finance updates on today's agenda, and it provides a high-level summary of the current financial position to the 30th of April, which is month one. The report itself is similar in format to previous current year financial reports, except that this time round forecasts are missing, as these won't be available until the end of quarter one. Instead of forecasts, the report includes a section on new and emerging risks. There's a year-to-date underspend of £12,000 reported on the integrated budget, and an overspend of £715,000 reported for the set-aside budget. Section 3 provides an update on the annual budget. There's quite a contrast in the way budgets are managed between health and local government, and the Scottish Government are yet to confirm a number of funding allocations to health boards and integration joint boards. A number of budget adjustments are yet to be processed, and the report notes that health budgets have been increased for inflationary pay elements, but further uplifts are yet to be processed for non-pays and for some other pay components. Additional funding should improve positions in due course. Section 3 also notes that some of the IGIB's planned developments are a work in progress, and until fully implemented, the directions retain associated funding in the new category described as recurring funding not yet mainstreamed. Section 4 considers year-to-date performance at this early stage of the year, and the table in section 4.1 summarises the position, while paragraphs 4.2 through to 4.9 provides further analysis by service area. Section 4.4 notes recent discussions with NHS Forth Valley's Director of Finance. An improved financial analysis of set-aside services is now anticipated. We also discussed outstanding due diligence for the medical staff budget transferred last year, and I attended a meeting last week where this information was shared. On review, a number of areas require further investigation, and finance colleagues in acute services are following this up and in due course. In primary care, prescribing is the main year-to-date overspend pressure, although there is very little information available at this stage, and some budget uplifts are yet to be reflected. The social care analysis at the bottom of page 53 isn't expected really until the end of quarter one, so we've got a budget position, but we don't have year-to-date actual figures. I would anticipate that ongoing pressures with the residential care budget will continue, and that they will continue to be offset by underspending in care home, daycare and social work staffing, all linked to the pieces. Section 4.7 notes that current Home from Hospital Reablement contract runs from August 2022 through to July 2023, with an optional one-year extension. The IGIB is being asked to approve the one-year extension while there is ongoing need for this capacity. The board is also being asked to approve in section 4.8 a final extension of the interim beds contract to the 31st of March 2024, again linked to the need for system capacity and funding from reserves. Section 5 considers new and emerging risks. It includes a link to the Scottish Government's recently published medium-term financial strategy, which identifies a funding gap within the Scottish Government and will doubtlessly mean a continuing need for savings and service redesign across the whole public sector. 5.3 notes additional funding for the hospice at home service provided by Strathcarron Hospice, while section 5.4 seeks approval for additional one-off reserves funding for Marie Curie, while future service delivery options are considered. The additional £25,000 cost will be shared between ourselves and McMahon and Stirling Station Joint Board. Section 5.5 touches on some of the financial risks that are outlined today in more detail in the primary care update report, which is later on today's agenda. And the rest of section 5 references the mental health and wellbeing primary care programme, Buvidal drug pressures, national care home contract concerns, uncertainty continuing the national care service, and Stirling Community Hospital Ward 5 contingency area with an exit strategy and funding considerations required to be resolved. Section 5.12 references the planned board workshop to consider the strategic plan, workforce plan, and medium-term financial plan. While this finance report is still very early in the new year, it does highlight a number of emerging risks that emphasise the importance of the workshop. Plan ahead, consider our resources and priorities, and what will evidently be a very challenging environment in the whole public sector. Just before I turn back to the recommendations, I should explain that I originally had planned to take the 2022-23 financial outcome report before this agenda item. And Appendix 1 within that report lists all of the reserve balances at the 31st of March. That does add context to the recommendations in this report, where funding is being requested from HIV reserves. The order was changed because of the significant financial risks highlighted in this report. But please do accept my apologies that by switching the order, you didn't see the reserve balances first. Back to the recommendations, and apologies again because there's quite a few of them. The board is asked to note the significant challenges to the HIV budget, note the year-to-date financial position, note that some inflationary uplifts are yet to be allocated, and these will change and improve the position. Note the Scottish Government medium-term financial strategy, note the additional Strathclyde service pressure, approve additional funding for Marie Curie, approve the directions in Appendix 1, approve the contract extensions for home from hospital labelling and insulin beds. Finally, note the planned workshop for this year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Stephen, and a very comprehensive report. But I suppose that there's not a lot of good news in terms of the current and emerging risks, and I think the board workshop will be really important for us to have a shared understanding and be able to work through those. I think that it's really important. I did have one question before I open it up with around 4.9 around the community healthcare services, and I just wondered if you might be able to say something about at the last sentence about the favourable year-to-date position last expected pressures within JLES and complex care, and whether there's something you might be able to say about maybe to just add a little bit more to that.
Yes, certainly. It's a theme throughout the whole report. Actually, there are areas of overspend and underspend. We have a number of areas that are all booked in the community healthcare services. It includes district nursing, allied health professionals in various different areas. Within a number of these services, there are underspends, and it's consistent with the position last year where we have a number of vacancies and staff turnover, and so there are a number of underspends, but also there are, as it says in the report, a couple of overspends. So the joint loan equipment scheme within the healthcare budgets, there were costs introduced a few years back for lower equipment inspections and other things that aren't fully budgeted, and so they remain cost pressures. There's also the growing demand on equipment within the community, and also that in itself generates pressures. In previous years, we have additional money, particularly through winter funds at the time of the year, so that we can further bolster the power of GLS to have additional equipment. Within complex care, complex care is a service where we provide some of the care ourselves for individuals who require that service. Some of it is provided out of area as well. And there are a couple of cases that are out of the area that are quite significantly expensive, and where we don't actually have sufficient funding there either. It's one of these services where one individual user is high cost, low volume. So the service can be very much subject to variation. But those are the two areas. Those are the two areas last year, early in this year to say categorically, but that's two areas I would expect pressures this year as well.
Tricia Jones.
Yeah, it was just to draw out some of the commentary we received from the external auditors at the audit committee last week. And he was taking his pains to point out that a relatively benign financial position in an outturn is really masking issues around sustainability, that our overspends have been countered by underspends because of difficulty recruiting in vacant posts, and that as a board we really need to consider that. And that's one of the themes that we will look at in the proposed workshop in August, to really have a realistic understanding of where we're sitting in terms of sustainability. And he was laying the challenge down that as board members, the board needs to consider the sustainability of the services given the rise in demand that we have, and that we know we have vacancies, and our ability to meet that demand is restricted by that difficulty. So I just thought it'd be helpful to pull that thread through. And you can see Gordon as the chair of the audit committee wants to come in on that as well. I don't know.
Here's your opportunity, Gordon.
Thanks, Chair. Stephen, firstly, can I offer my congratulations on your presumably very early retirement? Yeah, I mean, I was going to make a similar point to Patricia's in terms of the sustainability, or the question I think we have to say of the sustainability of the IJB moving forward. But that session does seem like a good idea in terms of being able to bring all of the information together and look at it in the round. And I know this is a month one report and we can't take too much from 1 month in isolation, but I think some of the trends that are beginning to emerge are a little worrying in terms of the overspends, and we know there is demand out there that isn't being met as well. The one question I did want to ask Stephen was in relation to 5.9 and 5.10 in the National Care Home contract position. I just wondered if you could expand a bit on what the implications would be if there is not a national agreement in place, and would that mean effectively we would need to negotiate individually with every care home and agree a price for every individual service?
Potentially, yes, Gordon. It is still quite early for me to understand the implications, but there are certainly concerns nationally that a number of providers may or may not withdraw from that National Care Home contract. One provider has already intimated that they do intend to withdraw from the contract, and it has quite a significant impact, not just in this Falkirk area, actually across probably West Scotland in particular. So there has been standing up of a national contingency group to consider the implications there. The messages coming out nationally so far through the Chief Finance Officer Network and through these other national groups through COSLA is it's in our interest to absolutely stand together, and for us not to break rank and offer something that differs from the National Care Home contract rates. All of our local providers signed up to the Memorandum of Variation, which means that if they do decide to withdraw from the contract, they have to provide at least 13 weeks notice. So we do have a period of time to allow further planning. But the obvious question is what happens if someone does break ranks? And the risk there, of course, is that if one integration joint force does decide to offer a higher rate, it may both encourage other providers to come off the National Care Home contract, and it may also apply further pressure for the rest of us to also offer a different rate. The National Care Home contract itself, they are still going through a negotiation process. There has been an interim payment to all of our providers for residential care that equates to a 3.3% uplift, and that should be sufficient to allow all of our providers to provide the national living wage increase to their staff. The rest of that uplift is subject of ongoing negotiation. It's national negotiations, and the last offer made was around about 6%. So it's a sizable offer, and the local system, not just their own local system, but other integration boards don't have capacity to extend beyond that without further support, further external support. So it really is in our interest to stay united on this one and to continue with the national payroll rate process and to encourage others to stay within that too. I don't know, Gordon, if that answers your question sufficiently.
No, that's very helpful. Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Gordon. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Convener. Clearly, this is early days, as Gordon was saying, in terms of the situation, but the trends do appear to be a bit worrying, financial trends. You mentioned that the Scottish Government has not yet confirmed the budgets, and that clearly makes for more a greater uncertainty. Do we know when the Scottish Government is likely to be confirming the budgets?
Now, I'm not sure what way to speak here, so I'll speak this way, and I hope you can still hear me online, but if not, please do shout up. Yeah, this isn't an unusual process for Scottish Government. It's not particularly exceptional this year for the health budgets. That's why I was saying there's quite a distinct difference between the way local government and health operates. So local government pretty much knows its funding at the start of the year. There might be the odd bit of funding that comes in thereafter. Health, this is common and has always been the case as far as I've been around in the healthcare system, that the budget isn't known at the 1st of April. This year there are some quite significant uncertainties, including last year's pay award and elements of the current year pay award. So the Scottish Government committed to fund the healthcare pay awards in full beyond 2% rebudgeted. They provided that additional funding last year, but they provided it non-currently, and they are working through a process just now to reinstate that on a recurring basis from the 1st of April this year. The reason it's taken a bit longer is because they also committed to looking at some of our areas that were previously budget-related type funding, so areas like Action 15 and Primary Care Improvement Plan. They wouldn't historically have had inflationary uplifts because they weren't yet earmarked recurring funding. They are now intended to be recurring mainstream projects, and so they also need to have that inflationary element added to them on an ongoing basis. And Scottish Government is wanting to take some time to work through that, to look through the expenditure trackers and information that has been provided. So we haven't yet seen last year's funding confirmation for the Gender for Change pay award. I haven't mentioned it in the report because I don't anticipate it being a problem. They have asked for the time to do it properly rather than put something out quickly. In the same vein, the funding for the current year pay awards hasn't been issued yet. It could be issued for the Gender for Change because that has been settled, but the medical staffing situation is still ongoing. So there will be funding and it will come through the year. The Primary Care Improvement Plan, the Action 15 funding hasn't been confirmed yet. So there are a number of areas that will build up during the year, and that's what's happened in previous years too. The sort of David Heron online earlier, the practice budgets, the funding for general practice. We don't typically receive those funds till in September, October. And partly that's because every year they reset the baseline and they look at the patient list sizes for every practice and they work through a number of different scenarios. So it is a very different beast on the health side from the social care side. Hopefully that kind of explains a bit more context.
Yes, thank you, Steve. Just got another question. In 4.9 is reference to the joint recruitment service and complex care and the expected pressures in there. Clearly, the more we enable people to remain in the community, the greater the pressures are likely to be. And that's a desired effect. What are we doing in the financial situation to try and plan for and prepare for dealing with these pressures?
Yep, so one of our service managers, Gordon McKenzie, is working alongside Pauline Byrne as part of the equipment review that Patricia referenced earlier on. Part of that work is actually looking at best practice elsewhere and how equipment schemes such as GLAS work in other areas. One of the barriers in the past has been the segmentation of funds. So there's funds from different pockets within the health budget, within different social care budgets and so forth. And that's all part of that review to see how we can improve the sort of financial awareness and the planning around equipment. You're absolutely right. It's an area where we want to see proper investment, and if we get that area correct, then we reduce the need for people to come into hospital and make sure people can live independently for longer. So that is part of the big equipment review that's been undertaken. I haven't got an answer to you yet, Councillor Anna, but that's what we're looking at.
So we have any idea of the timescale? Maybe I should ask Patricia.
I've already said we'll bring an update report. It's quite a complex piece of work, so we'll bring an update to the next meeting. But I think it's key that we've threaded through the reports in this for this meeting. That need for us with the board and the strategic planning group to do that workshop to look and understand the risks, the pressures, the challenges, the opportunities, and really frame what our business plan and business case is, not just for next year, but for the next 3 years, and taking account of our known unknowns as well as our knowns. So I think that would be a really useful session, and we'll put aside a whole day for that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Stephen.
Is there any further questions? No, in that case, are we happy to note items 21 to 25? Are we happy to approve the additional funding in respect of the Marie Curie SLA? Are we happy to approve the breakdown of payments as per directions? And to approve the 1-year optional extension to the Home to Hospital Reablement contract, and approve the interim bed contract extension. And obviously we've got the plan workshop within there to have the number of applications. So I shall pass back to Stephen for the draft financial outcome.
Pleased to learn I've got less to say in this one. The last one's really had a lot of important points. I will be quick, I promise. So the report provides an overview of the draft financial results for 2022-23, last financial year. And it notes an underspend of 3.412 million against core operational services in the integrated budget, and an overspend of £4.431 million for the set-aside budget. This is a draft position. It's subject to external audit, and the unaudited accounts have been submitted to both the audit committee and to our external auditors ahead of the 30th of June statutory deadline. Closing reserves of £28.829 million are detailed in Appendix 1, and we'll put them in the last report. And reserve movement is summarised in section 5.3, where we can see a decrease in year-on-year reserves of £8.224 million. Section 3 of the report provides further detail of the draft outturn position by service area, and also notes how the position has changed from the previous forecast outturn. Position summarised in the table within section 3.2, table 1. The treatment of year-end over and underspend is noted in section 3.3, and section 3.4 highlights the main reasons for various over and underspends within that overall position. Touched on the medical staffing due diligence in the last board report, but it's also mentioned here. Primary care prescribing continues to be our biggest concern. I haven't quoted the figure in here, but it reported an outturn overspend of £2.992 million. And there are a number of underspends within other areas that are linked to staff vacancies, recruitment challenges and slippage when implementing new initiatives previously highlighted to the IGIB board. Section 4 briefly touches on COVID funding. Section 5 touches on reserves, as I mentioned earlier. So that just brings me back to the recommendations. And the IGIB is asked to note the draft outcome for 2022-23 and note that the unaudited accounts were considered by the audit committee on the 26th of June this week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I'll open up for any questions. Neither. In that case, I'm just happy to note the report. Thank you very much. And I'd now like to move on to agenda item 8, and I think this is an area that many in the partnership will be very interested in. And I just want to check whether there's any declarations in relation to this. David?
Yeah, hi, good morning. Clearly, as the GP representative in this committee, I should declare my interest. I am, of course, an independent contracted GP as well. I don't feel I need to leave the meeting for this, but I just wanted to declare that interest. Thank you.
Okay, I shall. I'm having a wee blind there, so my agenda's over there, my eyes are over here, and Gail's going to provide the primary care update.
Thanks very much, Chair. And before I just summarise the report, just to note we've got Cathy O'Neill on the call, and also Stephen's obviously available to also support any answers to any questions. So this paper provides IGB members with an update on current developments within primary care, including a number of aspects. So there's an update on the transfer of primary care services to Falkirk IGB from the 31st of January as a coordinated service, noting that some of the supporting work around this transfer is continuing. This includes the recruitment of a head of primary care services post, which is imminently about to go out to advert, and the recruitment of an out-of-hours service manager post, which has been out to advert and which is now closed, and the recruitment process will now progress. Due diligence is ongoing to ensure that there is sufficient capacity to deliver the functions of primary care, including the planning, management and development of these services. And this is part of a wider integration due diligence piece of work that is ongoing across Forth Valley and including both partnerships. Work is underway with colleagues from Clarkson Stirling Partnership to ensure appropriate and proportionate governance is in place for this coordinated service as well. So updates will come as appropriate in relation to those wider pieces of work. The report also gives an update on local progress in delivering the primary care improvement plan. There's been a huge amount of progress and a lot of really hard work undertaken by colleagues working collaboratively with our GP partners. So 198 of the agreed 205 new posts funded through the programme are now in place. This is creating around 6,000 additional appointments across Forth Valley every single week. That's across pharmacotherapy, CTAC, which is community treatment and care centres, urgent care, mental health and advanced physiotherapy practitioners. So that's a huge piece of work that's been undertaken by that team. Work is underway also in relation to the GMS contract changes, which came into place on the 1st of April of this year. And as set out in the report, there are financial and delivery risks associated with the primary care improvement plan. So in recognition of this, officers from both partnerships and NHS Forth Valley have been in discussions with colleagues from GP Subcommittee and LMC to discuss how we work collaboratively to ensure our primary care improvement programme is financially sustainable and is compliant with supporting those elements of the GMS contract that are no longer the responsibility of GPs. So a proposed way forward has been developed jointly and is included in an appendix to this report. So in advance of the decision being taken by IGB today on Falkirk's share of the financial element of the proposal, A group is now in place, including representation from both partnerships, NHS Forth Valley, and representatives of the GP sub and LMC to work collaboratively together. At the moment, we're at the stage we've jointly agreed a process to develop an options appraisal, and we've developed initial objectives the options will be assessed against. So that is really good joint collaborative working in place and taking that forward. The report also contains an update to local changes to GP services in Falkirk. So this update highlights that a practice in Falkirk that had indicated its intent to withdraw from the contract has now taken the decision to continue to run its practice at the current time. Also, there's a proposed merger between Kinglass Medical Practice and Forthview Medical Practice. This is progressing and will take place in October 2023. A range of communications have been developed and issued to key stakeholders, informing them about the situation. In terms of mental health and wellbeing in primary care programme, there's also an update on that in the report. So this proposed funding stream was intended to support the scale-up of community link workers and mental health practitioners. Unfortunately, the anticipated funding hasn't yet come through, so there is a risk around that, and there's no timeline for when that funding will come through. So work is currently ongoing to develop an options appraisal around this work stream, including the current situation that we face, and further information again will come back to IJB in due course. So the recommendations in the report are we're recommending that IJB note the progress with the transition of primary health and social care partnership and the progress of implementing key posts to support this team. Note the significant impact of the delivery of the primary care improvement plan on general practice capacity. Agree that a transitionary payment funded from the IJB primary care earmark reserves will be provided to GPs for a 6-month period while an options appraisal is developed to consider how the required primary care improvement services can be delivered within the available funding envelope. An update will be provided to a future IJB meeting on this. Related to that recommendation, if IJB agree that recommendation, to instruct the Chief Officer to issue direction to the Chief Executive of NHS Forth Valley to implement recommendation 2.3. To note the challenges in GP capacity and sustainability as set out in the report. And finally, to note that discussions are ongoing about holding a joint development session with both IJBs and NHS Forth Valley to take members through both the challenges facing GP practice and the proposals that are being developed to address them. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Gail, and I think it's good to see the progress in the transfer of responsibility for primary care. It's been some time coming, there's no doubt in that. But I think it's an important development in coordinating our community health care, and like many on the board, I welcome this report and its developments. I think it's the start of a journey with very early stages. So I'm going to open it up to questions or comments. So David, would you like to come in now?
Yeah, hi. So not so much a question, more just a comment. I draw the committee's attention to 4.3, which highlights that the number of patients per whole-time equivalent GP is rising. This has been the case slowly over the last 5 to 10 years. What that means is that you as a patient get less GP time than you did 5 or 10 years ago. The report says it's constrained by a lack of workforce, which I would probably challenge. We're training more doctors than we've ever trained, and we've got higher numbers, or we've got good numbers of people training to be GPs. But what we find is that the highest number of people leaving general practice as a profession are those under the age of 30. So we are constrained by a lack of funding. We can't buy more GP sessions at the moment. The flow of GPs is good, but they're choosing other more attractive options. 4.4 in the report talks about the vacancy survey, and Forth Valley having a low vacancy rate. I think we just need to be careful. That can be a false narrative, because a practice will only advertise for a short period of time, and then they'll find another solution to meet their demand. Locally, we've developed a number of suggestions that we feel will support sustainability in Falkirk practices. Only one of those suggestions appears in today's report. And so I welcome the suggestion that we look more closely at sustainability at a later meeting. For junior doctors, they have an option of being a consultant, and that option is still more attractive both financially and workload wise. And until that's balanced out or flipped, then we'll see ongoing sustainability issues locally. We can attempt to mitigate these issues locally with adoption of some of the recommendations of the sustainability group, but clearly not everything is within our grasp locally. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Gordon. Gordon, can you hear us?
Sorry, I thought Margot was before me, Chair.
Oh, my apologies. I don't have numbers, so Margot.
Having difficulty here getting sound. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. It's just to ask if an attempt is going to be made to keep patients in the loop about all this, because I think there will be fears in people going in different directions and a sort of continuity of care. So are our patients going to be informed?
Yeah, so in terms of the changes to local GP practice, in particular the merger of the two practices, there has been communication sent to people who are affected, reassuring them of the what we put in place to ensure continuity of care. In terms of the wider issues that are raised in the report, communications as appropriate will be shared. It's obviously a really complex picture, and we need to make sure that we do communicate appropriately and I think it's really important that GPs, along with all of the supporting services, continue to deliver every day a really good service. And I think that's really important in terms of the messaging as well. So the messaging and the communications is a key consideration and will continue to be.
Thank you.
Good.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think the position in primary care is worrying, and I agree with everything David said. The other thing I would add is that a number of GPs are now choosing to work part-time. So sometimes looking at headcount numbers doesn't always give you the full perspective. I mean, in my own practice, we've gone from 4 full-time GPs to 7 part-time. So in theory, we have 3 more GPs, but in practice, the number of hours has actually decreased overall. So I think that's an interesting point. The other is in terms of the expansion of the primary care team. I think that's still a work in progress in terms of people seeing other specialties apart from GPs, and I think there's still a communications message needs to get through in terms of selling that, because I still hear people quite often talking about, you know, only seeing a nurse and not being allowed to see a doctor, when in fact seeing the nurse is actually far more appropriate for the condition they are. The other couple of points I would make in relation to mental health, and colleagues may know that Scottish Government COSLA's joint mental health strategy was announced yesterday, and there is certainly hope of some increase of provision of mental health activity in primary care and in communities more generally. So work to develop a delivery plan around that will be starting imminently, and I think the message that many of us will be giving to government is that more investment in primary care has to be a focus in that. The final thing I would say around the idea of a seminar or session on primary care, I think is a very good idea. Could I add this just as a suggestion that we add members of Claxon Stirling IJB to that, given that it is a pan Forth Valley service led by Falkirk? I think it would be useful to keep colleagues there up to speed with what's happening. Thanks, Chair.
Yes, thanks, Gordon, and I believe that's the plan. Maybe to involve both partnerships and the NHS. Ian?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just really a short comment, just I suppose around governance. Although my role here is third sector representative, my own organisation is one of the host organisations for community linked workers. I just wanted to put on record I didn't declare an interest because this report was just information which was already available to the host organisations. If we move forward to another meeting where there's any decisions required of the board, I would consider recusing myself from that just to keep us right in terms of governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Do we have any other questions?
It's just not so much a question as a comment. I'm really glad to hear that there is some discussion about sustainability, because clearly there are problems within primary care in terms of the way we take it forward. And I welcome the fact that the IJB now is going to be tackle those problems. And I look forward to hearing reports on the future.
Thank you very much. In that case, if there's no other comments or questions, I'll just move you to the recommendations. The first two are noted. The 2.3 is agreeing that a transitionary payment is funded from the IJB primary care earmark reserves. Are we in agreement? And to instruct the chief officer to issue the relevant directions. And 2.5 and 2.6 are both noted. So thank you everyone for that discussion, and we are really looking forward to the ongoing work on this with it. I think we're all in agreement. It is such an important piece of work. I shall move us on to the annual performance report. And Peter Suzanne.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. The report presents the draft annual performance report for 2022-23 for consideration and comment today. The report is also seeking board approval to delegate authority to the chief officer in conjunction with the chair and vice chair to approve our final recommendation. The board will be aware of our requirement to publish an annual report, and we must do this by the end of July. In recent years, we've managed to extend that timescale under the Coronavirus Scotland Act legislation, but that ended last year, so we're back to our statutory publication date of July. So our annual performance report should outline how the partnership is working towards the delivery of the strategic plan and the 9 national health and wellbeing outcomes. And this includes reporting on our core integration indicators for the full year and previous years for comparison purposes. And we also include in our performance report some local indicators where we can. Public Health Scotland produced our core suite of integration indicators on behalf of their partnerships. And this is anticipated to be made available to us at the end of July, hopefully next week. And once available, we'll include these in the draft annual report, and this is why we're asking for a delegated authority to publish. The draft plan presented today has been set out in clear sections. So in addition to reporting against the national health and wellbeing outcomes, we've included additional sections focusing on areas such as our communication and engagement work, technology, workforce, and both members will be aware these are the 3 new cross-cutting themes that are within the strategic plan. And we've also included a bottom-line section on our work around equality work. So in reviewing the report, the board will note the main contributions that we have from our services and partners, and it really demonstrates quite an extensive range of services supporting our individuals and communities. We will finalise the report, and we'll also prepare a summary report and a short video, which is something we did last year and posted on the website. And these will be circulated to board members and subsequently presented to Corporate Council and NHS North Valley Board. So in conclusion, the board is asked to consider and comment on the draft annual performance report and to approve delegated authority to publish a final report. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Suzanne. I started when I was reading through this, I started to write down things that I wanted to comment on. It got too long because there were so many things that I liked, and I thought but I think it really just shows the depth and the breadth of the services that the HSEB and our partners provide. It's really excellent, and it's setting out both the challenges and I think page 13, 14. In particular about our locality profiles and the challenges we're facing, but also the many developments seeking to react to these and meet the needs of our citizens and deliver on the outcomes that we seek to achieve. So I just want to say it's absolutely excellent report, and I'm now going to open up for comment or question. Caroline.
Morning, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to also echo that I thought that the report was really excellent. It's so comprehensive. I just had one question around about the annual health checks for people with learning disabilities, and I wondered if there's any timescales for rolling that out further. Thank you.
So we previously brought an update to the board through the Chief Officer reports on the progress of this. That's quite a significant programme of work that needs to be done, and we can certainly provide an update to a future board meeting within the Chief Officer report. I don't know if any other colleagues would want to add in this piece of work.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Caroline, and I don't know whether we can provide some of that information offline as well about where we are with that and what the next steps would be to you. Would that be okay, Suzanne?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Like Councillor Connie and started thinking about lots of questions and comments, but decided we haven't got enough time left in this session to do that. So it's a very good report, it's a thorough report, and it also is, I think, well structured and well presented so that it's easy to follow, which is difficult with a lot of difficult information. So thank you for that. Just one thing again, on pages 13 and 14, which is 103 and 104 of the agenda, as Councillor commented on it, the one thing that I would have liked to see a little more information about is the ageing population. It's mentioned on page 14, but clearly we know that there is an ageing population. We know that that is going to bring huge pressures to the Health and Social Care Partnership as time goes by. And I wonder if that could maybe for the future have a little more information. I might like to on the charts on page 13, it might be nice to have that chart as well.
Well, thank you for that. That's really helpful. We've got a very comprehensive strategic needs assessment document as well, so it's helpful for us to think about embedding a link into that, which gives you much more information. But thank you for that. Thank you.
So yeah, just to build on that, the strategic plan which came to the last board meeting has more detail of those projections, and particularly the 20-year projection around the growth of the bulk population, which is sitting at 6%. The working age population within that will only grow 2.2%, but the over 75 population is due to increase by 80%. So these are part of that needs assessment, and that data we will present to you at the planned workshop in August as a basis for some of our discussions. So thank you, that's helpful.
Do we have any other comments or questions? No, in that case, are we happy to delegate authority to approve the final report?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our next report is the performance monitoring report, and there's Cal.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to members of the board. So I'm going to take you through the performance monitoring report this morning. To start with, I'd like to draw attention to section 4.3 of the cover report, which details that this iteration introduces a new indicator, which we've coded as 72A, but that looks at the number of individuals assessed and waiting for a care at home package, and I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. In terms of the main body of the report, performance was reported up to March 23 where possible and with a year-on-year comparison. There is a focus on exception reporting, and I'm now going to take you through some of the key areas highlighted in section 1 of the report. The report highlights there are continued pressures around emergency department 4-hour compliance and around delayed discharges. The March 23 4-hour wait compliance for the Falkirk Partnership highlights a decrease in performance to 53.4% compared with 63.8% in March 22. The delayed discharge March 23 census is noted as 35 standard delays, of which 22 were delayed over 2 weeks, 23 Code 9 exemptions, giving a total of 58 delays. The overall position remains under continual review, and sections 3.1 and 3.2 of the report provide further details as well as some of the actions ongoing to support these areas. The report highlights the number of complaints received across both health and social work adult services, as well as the percentage of complaints responded to within timescales and some of the main themes of complaints received. For social work adult services, 67% of complaints in the year 22-23 were responded to within timescales, and for NHS services, it was 77.8 were responded to within timescales for the same period. The Clinical and Care Governance Committee continued to oversee complaints performance as well as monitoring the underlying themes. For social work adult services, the overall sickness absence figure for the year 22-23 was 11.1%, and that's compared to 12.8% last year. After feedback at the last session, we've begun exploring opportunities to benchmark our absence against other areas. What we are finding, though, is that this is challenging due to there's a number of different ways that absence can be reported, and also the different services that are included from different areas. But we're having discussions with HR colleagues for advice and hoping to make some more progress in this area. For NHS services, the overall March 23 sickness absence position is reported as 7.3% compared with 5.5% in March 22. The report details the latest position for waiting times for psychological therapies, and in March 23, 78.5% of a total of 289 patients started treatment within 18 weeks of referral. And that's an improvement from the previous month's position of 66.4%, however a slight decrease from 80.4% at the equivalent period the year before. The number of new telecare service users dropped from 185 in 21-22 to 116 in the latest year. The service is planning to increase engagement activities as well as reviewing the referral process to enable online referrals, and work is planned to take a closer look at the data to better understand this decrease and the reasons behind it. And lastly, just on the new indicator that I mentioned at the start, so that looks at the number of individuals assessed and waiting for a care at home package, and that's reduced from 246 at the end of March 22 down to 93 at the end of March 23. And it's anticipated when we next report on this that we'll be able to report on some further progress. In terms of recommendations, the board is asked to consider and comment on the content of the report and to note appropriate actions continue to be taken to address the issues identified. Thank you for listening, and happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Callum, and I think that last point about the number of people waiting for assessed waiting for a care at home package, that reduction is really excellent to see that progress, and I just thank you to everybody who's involved in making that happen. I'm interested in the stuff around telecare. I think I said to Suzanne about how do we drill down into that to figure out why there's been a reduction and whether it's something that is actually something to worry about or not. And I wonder if you get any comment you might be able to make on it.
Yeah, I'll come on that. Yeah, so we have spoken to the service, and what we're planning to do over the next coming weeks is to take a deeper dive into that data and see if there's any clues to help us better understand that. As you say, it could very well just be a blip in the data that we do see variation from time to time, but I think it's really important we look deeply into that to better understand it, and that's what we will do over the coming weeks.
Any comments or questions?
Hey, thank you, Candida. Just wondering if you might say a little more, because the way all this comes out, it looks to me, correct me if I'm wrong, page 229, that we're talking about reduction in demand for the emergency duty services, but the performance has reduced quite significantly. I wonder if you'd like to say a little more about that, where we've got lower demand but poorer delivery of the service. And as Councillor Collins said, with the reduction in the number of people waiting for a care at home package as well. So I'm trying to understand the reasons for this being an issue. If you help me there, that would be good.
So was that first question there, was that in relation to emergency department?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I think it's fair to say that that indicator is a complex one and is influenced by multiple factors. So it's not just that bit there. So bed occupancy, for example, length of stay, delayed discharges, all these indicators would have an impact on that, and these are areas that are under continued pressure at the moment. We have looked at the data for other areas as well. So and there is a similar picture across the country as well. So the Scotland average is higher than us at the moment. So I think for Scotland it's a 68%, but there are a number of areas who are performing less well than us as well. So we have been benchmarking that. Gail, do you want to come in?
Through yourself, Chair. Yeah, just to build on what Callum's saying. So this is it's a very complex situation that's about whole system approach and response. So across the system, we've been working closely with colleagues in Clacks and Stirling and our acute colleagues to fully understand what are the drivers and what are the conditions that help improve performance across a whole range of indicators. And there generally are correlations between 4-hour access standard, delayed discharge, length of stay, and other key indicators across our system. So we've been working in that whole system collaborative manner to better understand what are the key levers and what are the opportunities for high impact changes that we can impact on. So in Falkirk, we've obviously been doing a huge amount to better understand our demand and our flow, so we can take decisions that will positively impact on that. So in terms of noticing the number of people who are waiting for care in the community, and really positive story there in terms of that reducing, that there'll be a correlation between that and people who then end up needing to go into ED and then require maybe greater levels of care on their way home, recognising that the longer somebody's in hospital, the more they deteriorate. So in terms of our focus on making sure that we have the right levers and mechanisms and resources in place to ensure that people can be in the right place for their care journey at the right time is really critical. Obviously, we've got constraints on our services that are available. There's a number of reasons for that, including staffing resource, provider challenges, financial considerations, but we're working really hard across the whole system to fully understand, to inform our planning in terms of what we need to do, what we need to put in place to make sure that we can support people to be in the best place, most appropriate place for their care journey at the right time. And within acute hospital, there's similar drivers and considerations around getting the right decision making, that approach to risk, that approach to people if they're going to be ready to go home. Can they go home as early as possible in the day? Can we line everything up even if they don't need social care support? So we're working really hard to focus on what we know is the high impact changes, the things that we can do together that will make the biggest difference. And we have seen some green shoots through that. It's a really challenging and high pressured and high demand situation though. So it's a slow and steady improvement process, but it does, obviously we're seeing some blips in that trend at times as well.
I'm still, I mean, I understand it's a whole cycle that impacts on this, but I'm still trying to get at the reduction in the demand for the emergency duty service, the emergency department service, and the reduction in the ability to see people within less than 4 hours from arrival to admission. And it does seem to me that with fewer people demanding the service, there should be an improvement in the time scales, but there isn't. And do we have any explanation for that, or is that simply part of the greater process?
Coming through yourself, Chair. So, Councillor Hannah, I wondered if it might be helpful to have an offline conversation, and I can take you through a little bit more of the detail, if that would be helpful.
That would be useful.
Any questions? You?
That's fine, thank you.
David?
Yeah, and thank you, Chair. I mean, much like Councillor Hannah, what really struck me here was that numbers through A&E are not increasing, and Callum will probably keep me right, but my impression is they've really not increased for quite a number of years. The number of emergency admissions appears quite flat as well. Unfortunately, I brought up at a previous IJB last year, the readmission rate within 28 days has gone up again. And these things are really frustrating, and we heard from Stephen, we have an overspend on ED, so we continue to plough more and more money into ED. And I guess my challenge is, as an IJB member, how much are we getting to input into what's going on, and can we influence things a bit more with these things? You know, these are part of our budget, and I don't feel like we exert great control. We continue to put more and more money into these things, and we're not seeing results. Councillor Hannah had said being seen within 4 hours in ED. I think this is being managed and sent out of ED within 4 hours, so it is a slight nuance in the statistics, but it's easy to see some within 4 hours, but it's sometimes harder to process them and move them on to the correct ward or whatever within the 4 hours, which may be a big part of the failure. If there's not a bed to move them to, they get stuck in ED. But it does feel frustrating that I'm not sure everyone in this committee could say that we've had the opportunity to influence, and I think that is probably our role as an IJB for the emergency department and unscheduled admissions. Thank you.
Thank you, David. As members of the board are aware, we are very actively involved in some of the programme boards, including the Unscheduled Care Programme Board within the NHS. But I think David makes a really valid point that as a board, we've not been exercising fully our ability in terms of strategic planning around the set-aside budget and the issue of direction. So that's an area that I'll take away and have discussions with the Chief Executive and other colleagues about how the IJB does have and use more of its influence within this sphere. I think Gail's demonstrated we are very actively involved with some of the planning at the moment. There's, as part of the escalation process, there's also an ED improvement plan, which our officers are contributing to. But I think David makes very salient points, which I'm very thoughtful about, and I'll certainly follow those up. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? No, and in that case, are we happy to note the report? Thank you. Skip the paper. Item 11, the IJB governance report. Susan.
Thank you, Chair. The report provides an update on governance matters for the board to consider. The first relates to the need to appoint to the Vice Chair vacancy on the Audit Committee, and this is a vacancy for a corporate council full-time member, and the board is asked to appoint this vacancy. The second consideration, is to agree that Councillor Crawley will be the IGIB representative on Falkirk Community Planning Partnership Board. Representation to the CPP has usually been the chair of the IGIB, and the report also just notes that the chief officer is also a member of the CPP in the role as chief officer. The board is asked to note ongoing work to review the integration scheme, and that has been ongoing. The timescales for this to be concluded by June will be extended, and the revised timescale will be agreed with Falkirk Council and NHS Group Valley, and an update will be provided at a future time. The last matter for vote decision relates to the ongoing programme of work in relation to the public sector equality duty. This includes work to ensure quality impact assessments are completed with all reports presented to the IGIB, its committees, to our senior leadership team and to relevant decision-making groups within the HSCP. To support this work, we've developed some detailed guidance, and we're also offering one-to-one support for officers in addition to the online materials that are available. And we've also refreshed our equality threat page and published our completed EPIs in line with our duties. The board, however, has been asked to extend the quality outcomes, and we included these in our new quality outcomes and mainstreaming report, and we're looking to extend that through 2024. In requesting this, we have considered our obligations to publish and publish our timescales and discussed our approach with the Equality and Human Rights Commission. By extending our timescales, it reflects the scale of the work required to develop evidence-based and meaningful outcomes, and importantly, to budget result in these. And this will be compliant with the duty and the EHRC guidance. We are planning to bring forward a more detailed report to the board in September, detailing our ongoing progress with our equality duties. And in conclusion, the board is asked to consider the recommendations at 2.1 and to 2.4. Article 3 is our take from one.
Just take them one by one.
So the board first was asked to appoint the vacancy on the audit committee, and that vacancy is vice chair.
Okay, so that Jim, you've unmuted there.
Sorry. Yep.
Would you like to come in, Jim?
Yep. So no, it's all right. The sound went there. I just missed what you said. Apologies.
We're discussing the recommendation at 2.1 to appoint the vacancy of the vice chair on the audit committee, and that's open to Falkirk Council with 10 members.
Yep.
Is that yourself?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. We got there. What if I want to propose you? Are we all in agreement? Maybe. Are you? I'll pass over in terms of the agreement around the IGIB.
Okay, so the proposal is then to appoint Councillor Jim Flynn onto the audit committee as vice chair. I'll pass it to you for this. The next one then is to agree that Councillor Fiona Colley will be the IGIB representative on the Falkirk Community Planning Partnership Board.
Agreed.
2.3 is to note the work to review the integration scheme is ongoing, and we will agree revised dates and bring this forward. And the final one is to agree to extend the quality outcomes until 2024, noting that we will also bring forward a new quality outcomes and mainstreaming report to the board in March 2024.
Agreed. Thank you. Can I just briefly ask one question around the quality outcomes of particularly the APIs? I was going to say yesterday, but actually I think it was the day before. A council passed agreed a motion around the inclusion of care experience in EPIs as a particular characteristic, and I suppose it was just a question about how does that follow through into the work of the IGIB?
We would propose to the IGB, obviously it came after the papers have been issued, but we would be proposing to the IGB in the future meeting that we would also include that with members of the board when implementing.
Thank you. That future meeting, that's great. Okay, thank you very much for that, Suzanne. Thank you, and thank you, Jim. And so we're on to our session finally. So the HSCP communications update, and there's Paul. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Chair, and good morning. So I'm pleased here to be again presenting the quarterly communications update, which provides a summary of activity from across services and demonstrates how we are implementing the partnership's communication strategy. So to begin, a quick summary of activity between January and March this period. We received 20 pieces of coverage, an estimated reach of over 162,000, a social media reach of 68,000, and website visits of 8,500. The report provides an update on the proactive coverage received during this period, which covers key service developments, and this includes the development and finalisation of the strategic plan, the announcement of a whole systems plan to take forward the progress and work so far from the Community Hospital Master Plan project, and the next round of funding awarded by the Partnership's Health Inequalities and Wellbeing Fund. The report also covers media issues of note, which I think you'll be aware will include the actions underway to respond to NHS Forth Valley's Stage 4 escalation and the performance framework, and also just general funding concerns in health and social care, which interest across Scotland is being received as local IGBs confirm their budget arrangements for the next year. So a full list of the coverage received during the period is at the end of the report, and online links are available where that's applicable. The report also covers a summary of changes to the website and recent blog posts, and as Suzanne mentioned in the previous agenda item, that includes updates to our equalities page, making it clearer about our public sector duties and making it easier to find copies of our impact assessments. We've also made changes to what was previously called the complaints page, which is now a compliments and complaints page, which incorporates the new care opinion feedback option, which launched in April this year. And then your bonus section for this communications update is within Appendix 2, which is a full campaign evaluation of our Career That Cares recruitment activity. I have to stress that the fantastic results within that are a huge part down to the support and involvement of staff from the home care team, who've played a huge role in developing the materials, sharing our message, and of course attending the events and the drop-ins that we've been taking part in over the past 6 months. So you'll see that over the past 6 months during that campaign, we've achieved a reach of almost 950,000 across all channels. So that's TV, radio, online and print media. We hosted 2 successful events, attracting around 150 attendees and potential candidates, and supporting 22 partner and employers to find new team colleagues. And where possible, we've also been able to attend external events and held targeted drop-in sessions within our localities. And what does that mean for applications in the workforce? We have recorded a 70% increase in applications to home care, so that's personal care roles, and an improvement in the ratio of successful applicants. And we've also projecting or forecasting a significant reduction in leavers, and that's particularly those down lows to those leaving within the first 12 months of their employment. As well as the success of the campaign within the 6-month period, we're also now in a better footing for future and to continue this approach. So that's through things like having that event toolkit with banners, leaflets and materials to take us on the road to careers fairs and other events. It's the new starter packs and improved onboarding processes and mentoring processes that we've implemented, and the new careers page to promote a wide range of roles. And of course, the application process itself has changed for frontline roles in home care, with the option to upload a CV in just a few minutes. So lastly, I'll just return to the recommendations of the report, which are just to consider and comment on the content. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul, and again an excellent report, and I think the work on the workforce campaign has been absolutely excellent, and you can see that in the results. So thank you very much for that. So I'll open it up for any comments or questions.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I think the results in terms of the recruitment campaign have been excellent, and I'm sure greatly appreciated by colleagues. And what is the next step on that? Because we are still struggling to recruit ANSAR people across the whole of Scotland and UK. So what are the plans for taking that forward?
Yeah, so we're now in sort of that better footing of having the materials that we didn't have before. So things like the webpage and even just the ability to attend different events. So I think we are going to continue the in-person events. So I think we've sort of said that we're going to look at doing that every 6 months. So again, in October time, we'd be looking to host another partner event. And of course, we're now better set to promote a range of roles through social media, etc. And signpost people to that web page. We've also been discussing other areas of the partnership that we can roll that Career That Cares sort of banner out to. So we've been working with social services, especially with their restructure of those sort of roles and how we apply the same sort of thinking and promotion to those as well. So you'll have seen that through the videos that we produced with Sarah and Martin and some of the social care workers. So that's kind of how we're evolving the campaign and applying it to different parts of the partnership.
Thank you. Margot.
I hope you can hear me.
Yep.
Just to say that on behalf of service users, I think you're providing an excellent opportunity for empowering people with lived experience, and I think it's much to be commended, and the variety and the encouragement I hope to attend events. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments or questions? No? So thank you very much for the report, Paul. And I'll move us on to our final item, which is the approved minutes of meetings. I don't propose to take us through these minutes unless anyone has any specific questions. I just had one question around the area partnership forum minutes, and I just wondered that they're not listed. And I believe that might have been a timing issue, just to make sure that it's.
Yeah, we bring the minutes from the committees to the board once they've been ratified at the following meeting. And the area partnership forum doesn't meet until next week, so it's not been able to approve the minutes, but we'll update the board as appropriate at the next meeting.
Great, thank you very much. Are there anything on the minutes? No. In that case, bring us to the end of the meeting. So thank you for your time everybody today, and thank you for everybody who has presented reports today. And I hope everyone gets a little bit of downtime over the summer. And I hope the weather improves and go back to where it was a couple of weeks ago. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.